With that, I'll call meeting to order at 6 o'clock for the City of Beaumont regular council meeting for Tuesday, December 14, 2021. First of all, I will read the land acknowledgement before we begin our meeting. We are pleased to be here today on the traditional territory of Treaty 6 and the Métis homeland. We acknowledge all those who share a deep connection with this land. The City of Beaumont respects the histories, languages, and cultures of all of Canada's First Peoples, whether they be of First Nation, Métis, or Inuit descent, and appreciates that their presence continues to enrich Canada's vibrant communities. We are all treaty people. The peace treaties bind us all. Thank you. And with that, I will move to point number 2 on our agenda, adoption of the agenda. Administration, are there any changes to the agenda this evening, please? Ms. Winter.
Thank you, Mayor. Administration has 2 amendments to the agenda this evening. That the item 6A Age-Friendly Alberta Recognition Award presentation commences after item 3 consent agenda on the agenda, and that item 11B removed from the agenda. This will be brought back to council for discussion at a later meeting. Thank you.
Does 11B correct to be deleted? Thank you. All right, is there a motion to adopt the agenda as amended? Councillor Van Newkirk, you have the floor.
So moved.
Thank you, Steve. Any question on the motion? All those in favor? Kathy, are you with us remotely?
Yes, I am, Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, can I hear you? How do you vote, please?
I am in favor of the adoption of the agenda.
Thank you, appreciate that. That carries 6-0. And with that note, I just wanted to mention the fact that Councillor Muckoff-Swain has been detained, or not detained, delayed from his job at transportation. I shouldn't say detained, has a wrong connotation, so strike that. Sorry, Sam, if you're listening somewhere, sorry about that, but he's been delayed for travel purposes from his job. He could not make it this evening. He sends his regrets. So we'll be going with 6 council members this evening for all of our votes. Thank you very much, council, appreciate that. We now are going to move to the consent agenda. We have several items on the consent agenda, namely being that 5A, regular council meeting, November 23rd, 2021, moved to the consent agenda. Number 7D, public board and committee appointments being removed to the consent agenda. And 8C, bylaw 10004-21-2022, fees and charges being moved to the consent agenda. And 11C, Beaumont under 15 AA hockey provincial championship bid support letter request being moved to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to, Councillor McCook, you have the floor for a question.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Daniluk. I just have a question through to Mr. DeBlanco. Hey, Curtis. I just don't see any changes to the fee schedule regarding my motion that I made last week. Have those changes been made, or are they coming?
Mr. Blanco.
Yes, through the mayor to Councillor McCook. So in regards to the amended the motion rather, discounted rates have been incorporated, which is on Schedule 12 of the bylaw. And that would reduce the community boardrooms at the community center from $35 to $30 and $25 respectively for adult registered nonprofit groups and registered youth nonprofit groups. So we incorporated that change to allow for discounted rates for those boardrooms.
Thank you. That's your question, Councillor McCook.
Yes, thank you. I would like to move to remove fees and changes from the consent agenda.
Okay, thank you very much. So the motion is to adopt the consent agenda.
Thank you.
With items 5A, 7D, and 11C. So moved by Councillor McCook. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Councillor Barnhart, how do you vote?
In favor?
Thank you. Motion carries 6-0. Thank you. Unanimous vote. Appreciate that. Next, we'll move to, we moved 6A up to after consent agenda, which is our registered presentation, Age-Friendly Alberta Recognition Award presentation. I'll welcome to the microphone MLA Brad Rutherford. And Brad, just pull the microphone close to your mouth if you don't mind. It's just for volume for the at-home listeners. Thank you.
Sure.
You have the floor, Brad.
Thank you, Your Worship, and for council for having me here to make this presentation, and congratulations. I don't think I have seen all of you since the election, So congratulations to those newly elected and those re-elected. I think Beaumont's going to be well served by a council that both has some experience carrying over, but also some new perspectives. So I'm looking forward to that. And I'm honored to join you on behalf of the Minister of Seniors and Housing, Josephine Pon, and my other government colleagues. Minister Pon asked me to pass along her regrets for this evening, but it's exciting to be here for this occasion. On behalf of the Alberta's government, it is my privilege to officially recognize the City of Beaumont for its work towards becoming an age-friendly community. Becoming an age-friendly community is a grassroots movement. It's spearheaded by the World Health Organizations, for those who don't know, to build the social and physical conditions with seniors in mind. Alberta is a young province, but the number of seniors is on the rise. Today, there are more than 690,000 seniors who call this province home. And as our aging population grows, it is all more important to make sure that our communities are safe and welcoming for seniors. All governments, community partners, and everyday Albertans must work together to address the challenges and the opportunities of an aging society. Alberta's government believes it is important to celebrate the communities working day in and day out to support the seniors' quality of life. This is why we encourage and support communities, big and small, to become more age-friendly by considering how seniors will get around in and interact with and contribute to their community. Our age-friendly Alberta recognition program acknowledges communities working towards this very important goal, and I applaud Beaumont's commitment to becoming an age-friendly city. Beaumont's strategy works towards a future that supports the well-being and the full inclusion of seniors, and it strives to be an accessible, healthy environment or vibrant community for everyone. By working closely with local seniors and representatives from multiple sectors to develop your strategy, you set an excellent examples for other communities to follow. Your efforts will strengthen your community and make life better for everybody in Beaumont. On behalf of Minister Pon and Alberta's government, it is my pleasure to present the Age-Friendly Alberta Recognition Award certificate to the Mayor and Council members. And I'm pleased to recognize the City of Beaumont's hard work, good ideas, and progressive approach to becoming an age-friendly community. Beaumont will also receive an invitation to enter the World Health Organization's global network of age-friendly cities and communities. Ultimately, putting your vision into action will help seniors live more active, independent, and happy lives. So congratulations to all of you. I think this is an important moment for Beaumont. It shows that the city is working very hard for its residents of all ages and can be a place where all people can age in place and be able to use the community and the facilities to make sure that the community that they want to live in is going to be accessible to them and provide that to them. So thank you very much, Your Worship, and for the opportunity to present this award to you.
Thank you, Ms. Rutherford. Always great to have a member of the government in front of us and talk about things in the province. It's always a welcome. And I have a couple of notes myself to make on this topic. The age-friendly strategy helps us make our community even more inclusive. The concrete actions outlined in the report support an accessible, healthy, and vibrant Beaumont where residents can age in place. This strategy is a truly collaborative work that included the efforts and research and insights of many residents, community groups, and city staff. I understand the working group included people from 10 different organizations, along with members of our community. On behalf of City Council and the City of Beaumont staff, I'm honored to receive this recognition from the Alberta government. I want to thank everyone involved for their contributions. Recognition is well deserved. So I guess with that, we'll do a little photo opportunity for you and I to do a little publicity thing, which is not a bad thing. So I'll join you there in a moment, Brad.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Where do you want to sign?
You're smiling, absolutely. Smiling, I think is the word. You're great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Would you mind, Mike? Look and see, Brad, you like this? Thank you. Thank you to the members of the public and this administration this evening for allowing that presentation. On the next part of our agenda is going to be open forum. And we have a unique situation this evening. We did have, I believe, 3 presenters on the same topic. Ms. Winter, I believe only 2 were able to make it this evening due to unforeseen circumstances. Okay, so we will proceed with open forum. The structure of open forum is as follows. Each presenter will have 5 minutes to present their information, at which time council may or may not ask them clarifying questions. of the presenters or administration after each presenter has spoken, okay? After that point, we'll receive your presentation as information for council. So whoever wants to come first, please come up to the microphone, sit down, enjoy, take your mask off if you'd like to, introduce yourself, and then when you're ready to speak, we'll have 5 minutes, okay? Good evening, welcome to council.
Thank you.
And please pull your microphone close to the front so we can get a good, clear
that
message
better?
on the people listening in at home. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Daniluk and council members and staff for the opportunity to bring forward our concerns in respect to this land use bylaw 94419 passed in 2019. My name is Terry Watominick. I've been a resident of Triumph Estates since June 2019 after retiring and moving to Beaumont from Edmonton. So I'm happy to hear that you were just awarded this opportunity, because that tells me that I've picked the right place to retire. So after a career in housing industry for 30 plus years, working directly with municipal stakeholders on interpretation of housing statutes and leading legislative regulation reviews, this bylaw raised concerns to me and others in Triumph Estates. Therefore, specifically, it's the conventional neighborhood district section of this bylaw that is allowing up to 4 dwelling units per lot that came to our attention. And this bylaw came to light after construction at 3905 44th Avenue started in September. And after further inquiry and review of the posted building permit, it was noted that there were 2 additional dwelling units approved in the walkout basement, 1 1-bedroom and 1 2-bedroom. And after almost 2 months of emails to the city by many homeowners, an email was received from planning apologizing for a misunderstanding and indicating that the permit was revised to include 1 dwelling, as the other dwelling in the basement would remain as part of the main dwelling. Confusing? Yes. To date, we've not seen a revised permit, nor have we seen any changes in the basement construction to indicate this change. So after reviewing the housing plan, it appears it includes 5 master suites on the main and second floors with 3 bedrooms in the basement dwelling. This build is an 8-bedroom house. The bylaw speaks of potential incompatibilities with existing housing. And as you can see from the photos that were provided in the presentation, this house is not compatible with existing homes due to the size, and with its solid exterior back wall and 2 solid doors in the walkout basement. The photo shows that the surrounding homes have variations in wall plans and exterior doors with glass inserts, which falls under the architectural and design guidelines. Homeowners adjacent to this multi-dwelling build have concerns with the lack of privacy in their yards, as the only access to these basement dwellings will be from the exterior doors in the walkout basement, which backs onto a public walkway and green space. And concern would be, how will emergency services access these basement dwellings with no access from the main dwelling on 44th Avenue? Another concern with this multi-dwelling of this size is the multiple kitchens and bathrooms potentially causing an overuse of infrastructure, services of power, water, sewer, garbage, and parking issues. A lot designed for a single dwelling would services not be needed to be upgraded for this additional pressure. No homeowners were aware of the additional dwellings being built within these single lots, and no notices were delivered to adjacent homeowners. And we found out under this bylaw, additional dwellings are not a discretionary use. The notice of development and permits we reviewed have been worded many different ways, causing confusion. And these discrepancies include use of wording such as dwelling unit, basement unit, secondary suite, and finished basement. Isn't a land use bylaw very specific with definitions and open to interpretation and not open to interpretation or paraphrasing? And we understand there was public participation during the development of this bylaw, but the majority of the homeowners that this bylaw is now impacting were not even residents of Beaumont at the time. And therefore, there was no indication of any changes to the single dwelling lots we purchased, nor were we presumed anything different to be built on those lots. And the Triumph Estates original development encompasses the western portion of Triumph Boulevard, Gate, Close and Point, which was developed with many high-value homes on estate lots. Then phase 1 was planned, and it developed starting with the same estate lots, and then gradually incorporated the smaller lots as it developed easterly. And with these two phases, having more than 10 vacant lots still to be developed, the bylaw allowing multiple dwellings should not have been applied to an existing subdivision that was almost 90% complete. And sadly, since we started investigating this issue, there have been 7 new builds with many approved with more than 1 dwelling per lot. And this has caused a tremendous amount of concern and distress for the current homeowners adjacent to these builds. We are not opposed to a development of 1 additional suite in a dwelling of reasonable size compatible with existing homes. However, we do oppose a build that is clearly oversized with multiple dwellings and double the number of bedrooms in homes in this community. Therefore, the community of Triumph Estates is requesting a review and amendment to the land use bylaw. And we know a bylaw takes time, but we request a city review of the existing outline plans for the subdivision and guidelines and impart some sound judgment for any further development permits being approved on the remaining Triumph Estate lots. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. We were well past 5 minutes, but I want to give you a
Sorry.
chance to finish up your last little paragraph there. So,
Thank you.
oh, you're welcome. I appreciate offering the courtesy to you. Are there any questions from council for our presenter of a clarifying nature? Or is there any questions from council for administration based on the presentation we just had a few minutes ago? Sometimes are, sometimes they're not. So don't read anything
fine.
into that, just the
Nope,
way it goes.
That's fine. Yep.
Okay. Seeing no questions for our presenter. Oh, Councillor McCook, you have the floor. I'll come to you, Kathy, in a moment, okay? Catherine, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mayor Daniela, and thank you, Terry, for coming. You stated there were concerns brought to bylaw. What were the concerns? Were they safety code? Were they?
Oh, to by law enforcement?
Mhm.
There was a number of issues with regards to burying construction debris on the lot. There was concerns with them damaging adjoining properties as they were continuing to build. There was actually a number of those that came through to by law enforcement.
Okay.
Follow-up question, Councillor?
And then with the lots that you said that have been approved with multiple dwellings, have they started construction?
Yes, unfortunately, what happened was we didn't realize that there was actually a multiple dwelling building being built because when it's a walkout basement, so you're expecting a nice walkout basement that complements the rest of the houses in the community. It wasn't until after the building started to be built and we realized that there were these 2 main doors in the basement. That's when we started to investigate what's actually being built here. And that's when we found out that the building permit was actually approved with 2 additional dwellings in the basement.
Okay, thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from council for administration? Okay, 1 second, Renee. Sorry, I meant to go to Kathy first. Kathy, you're on the phone. Do you need any questions?
Mayor, I do have questions, but not for the presenter. She was very clear. I do have questions for the administration. So if you could come back to me later, that would be great.
Okay, I'll come back to you after the presentation or after the second presenter.
After the administration presents, if they are presenting.
They aren't. I'll get
They
back.
are not. Okay.
Councillor Tessier, you have the floor.
Thank you, Terry. This is for administration. So just to confirm, I know Terry used a couple different words for the basement suite and the 2, what looks to be fire doors. Have we confirmed if it's 1 suite or 2 suites and the wordage on it, I guess?
Ms. Raymond?
Yes, through your worship to Councillor Tessier. So in the land use bylaw, they are referred to as dwelling units, which could encompass the secondary suite. It could encompass the main principal use of the building, but they're also known, as I just said, as secondary suites or additional dwelling units. So there's a couple of different ways, but we do refer to them in the land use bylaw as a dwelling unit. And then in addition to that, the 2 doors, I'm not entirely sure if we've clarified if they're fire doors or whatnot. They're just part of that permit. There is only 1 suite in that basement though, that is a separate suite. The other one belongs to the principal use of the whole building. So it's the main floor, second floor, and then there's a basement aspect where they have a suite, but it's part of the house.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Follow-up question, or you're good?
Good, Mayor. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Barnhart, you have the floor for a question for administration.
Thank you, Mayor. For the administration, I just want to clarify what you just said. If I understand correctly. The permit was for multiple dwellings in the same building, was for 2 dwelling units. Is that correct?
Ms. Raymond?
Through your worship to Councillor Barnhart, what the permit was issued for was for a single detached dwelling with an attached garage and the 1 2-bedroom basement suite.
And then where this gets confusing for me is I heard 8 bedrooms. Are we defining those as like 4 bedrooms for each dwelling unit?
Through your worship to Councillor Barnhart, I'm not entirely sure where 8 bedrooms came into effect. There's actually 6 in this property. The way that they are defining what the dwelling units though are is that there is a separate suite that is in the basement and then the rest of it is part of the house. So that configuration, I believe there is 1 bedroom in the basement that is not part of the suite. It's part of the principal use of the house. And, you know, like if you had like a grandmother suite or a nanny suite in your basement, having that. And then the rest would be part of that house. So I just want to confirm what a dwelling unit is. And so a dwelling unit is defined in the land use bylaw currently. It's defined as a self-contained living premise with cooking, eating, living, sleeping, and sanitary facilities for domestic use by 1 or more individuals. So that would clarify where that dwelling unit is.
Thank you, Ms. Raymond. Thank you, Councillor Barnhart. Any further questions?
Not for me, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Terry, I didn't catch your last one. I apologize, but Terry, thank you for your presentation. We do appreciate it. It'll be recorded as information, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a second presenter, I believe, on the Triumph. Same subject, I believe. We have a second presenter.
I don't have anything prepared, but.
Mr. Royer, take the seat. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you. Is this on?
You're welcome. And when you're ready, you can begin. You'll have 5 minutes, and the same procedure will follow. Questions from council of a clarifying nature or administration. Whenever you're ready, Dan.
Okay. I don't actually have much prepared. I wasn't sure if I was going to make it tonight, but just a few things to note. Pardon me. I'm no longer a home builder, and I'm now a realtor. And I was kind of happy to leave some of the bureaucracy behind, and I got kind of roped into this discussion, and I felt kind of obligated to speak up as a citizen of the town, or the city now. When the land use bylaw changed, we didn't show up as a builder. We were invited, and we stopped showing up because nobody actually listened. It was more of a meeting to tell you what was changed, and it was always a meeting where you were invited as if your opinion would matter, but it really didn't. It was more of a, here's what we're going to do. So we stopped showing up to these, and the last land use bylaw that came through was a major overhaul. Completely threw away the old one, brought in a new one that looks to be actually an adaptation from, I think it's someplace down south by Calgary, can't remember, High River or something. Anyways, upon looking at this, there's some pretty cute things that from a cute standpoint and from a spirit, I can see who the people that wrote this from the spirit of the law is really good, but I look at things from how they can be exploited. There's a few things. One is that you can build a single home with 4 dwelling units in it, and you're only required 1 extra parking space for if the units are over 807 square feet. So we know we need more housing. We know we need more affordable housing. We know that mixing affordable housing with higher end, we know that that's done really well in places like Summerside. And so I'm supporting of that. But how this is going to be exploited is, some of these builders can build a house with 4 dwelling units and build it in such a way that they don't have to do a lot for extra off-street parking. So it's very lucrative for a builder to do this and then actually rent these out at $1,200 a pop. Now that's fine, that's great. We get more affordable housing and such, but what happens when we do a whole block of these? And what the argument will be is, well, this bylaw has been in here for this many years. That hasn't happened yet. It takes a while before these things get caught on and get to be known. And we're starting to just see the start of this. And I think it's going to be a really bad Beaumont talks issue eventually, where you're going to have builders come in, buy 3 or 4 lots, build 4 dwelling units, and have massive parking issues and angry people. And these bylaws aren't written where they're discretionary uses, so they don't have to have letters going out to neighbors and looking at it any closer than that. The city is actually obligated to stamp approved if they follow the land use bylaw. So there's no, oh man, we think we wrote some bad legislation here, we should look at this. It has to be stamped approved. So that's where I get scared, is that we've done such a major leap and then we've taken out the discretionary portion of it. And there's nothing that can be done if a builder comes in and says, I want to do a whole road of these 4 dwelling units, one after another, with hardly any extra off-street parking. We've got Teslas and these sorts of things with extra power use, sewer use, gas use. And we're not thinking that way, that could actually be a problem, but it's very lucrative for somebody to build 4 dwelling units and then rent these out. The other thing too is there's, if you haven't looked at this legislation, it actually talks about commercial uses. Really cute, again. You can have like a little ice cream shop. So in a residential area, this house, as long as it looks like a house, it can be an ice cream shop. We've got a coffee place here. Believe it or not, it says you can have a church as long as it looks like a house. On a Sunday, it could be a church. This can be a permanent play school. Nobody's living in these as long as they look like homes. Now that's really cute, because from my perspective, I'd like to go walk to get an ice cream from a cute little place on my block. But how that'll be exploited is, if you can imagine going to like one of these BNI groups, and you've got lawyers and doctors and realtors and builders and whatever. You got a lawyer, a guy that's an accountant. You've got maybe 3 or 4 other professional businesses, and they go get together and they go, you know what? Beaumont has this new bylaw. We can buy up a city cul-de-sac and we can put our businesses. We can have a lawyer's office, dentist. We can have accountant office. We can have registry office. And then this poor little fella here that bought for his family with a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. I know I have to finish up, but I just want to finish this one point.
Very quickly, Dan,
Yes,
please.
but this one person that bought in here originally and built a home is now completely surrounded by Beaumont's professional corner. And that will happen. These BNI groups, they don't want to put a lawyer's office there and a dentist here and whatever. They want to control and put it together so that it's in a hub. And that can be a problem if you were the first one in thinking you were going to be surrounded by homes, and now it's just a business area.
I'll have to cut you off there,
that's it.
Dan. Sorry about that.
Yep. No, it's
I
good.
appreciate the comments. Again, information purposes, thank you. Just stay there in case it's a question from a
okay.
counselor, maybe. Council, does anyone have any questions for our presenter of a clarifying nature? Seeing none, Ms. Barnhart?
I'm good, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from council for administration based on the last presentation we just received? Seeing none, Ms. Barnhart?
Yes, if I could again to Ms. Raymond, is Mr. Royer's interpretation of the 4 dwelling units in a single home, is that a correct application of the land use bylaw the way it is now?
Your worship, to Councillor Barnhart, you can have 4 dwelling units on a parcel as long as it all fits and you meet your maximum site coverage. So you could have a dwelling unit above a garage, you could have one in your basement, you could have a nanny suite conceivably in your backyard if you had a lane, and then you could have your principal use. But that, of course, is you need to be able to fit that all in and meet those the property coverages. So yes, you could have 4.
And the number of parking spaces that go along with that, what is the calculation of that?
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Barnhart, it's one parking stall for every 75 meters squared. So on this particular application, there's actually 6 parking stalls because there is a 3-car garage here. So just to put that into context.
Okay, thank you for that, Ms. Raymond.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Barnhart. No further questions? Mr.
But
Royer,
that-
thank you.
I did want to talk about that 6 spots.
Actually, I'm sorry, you can't do that.
Okay,
I've already given you more than enough time, and in all due respect, we have to curtail the discussion.
okay.
Thank you, Mr. Royer, for your presentation. And Terry, thank you again. Your last name, sorry, but thank you for coming. We do appreciate that. And we see both presentations as information. Thank you very much. Next agenda item is moving on with our agenda this evening is 7A, Restriction Exemption Program Update. I believe, Mr. Suter, you'll be speaking to council this evening on that topic.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Thank you.
Tonight, I'm here with a brief report on the impact of the Restriction Exemption Program as it pertains to Beaumont's recreation facilities. Just a little background. The Public Health Order 422021 came into effect September 15th of 2021, and it mainly affected facility operators of recreation businesses that offer community centers, recreation businesses that offer indoor gyms, fitness centers, rec centers, and such, as well as curling rinks and other studios, arenas. So for us, that impacted 3 facilities, the community center, the Ken Nickel Rec Center, as well as the Beaumont Sport and Rec Center. Facility operators had a choice through that health order to either operate under the restriction exemption program or to operate with restricted capacity and operating restrictions. Both of these options obviously came with impacts to both users and the operators. At council meeting, September 17th, 2021, administration went over those options and council directed to operate those facilities under the recreation exemption program, which was option 1. And the rationale being we wanted to provide as much service in the rec facilities to as many people as we were allowed to do, which meant we didn't have to restrict capacity as long as we adhered to the order. So the 3 main impacts that we've noticed is administration impact, as well as users and patient impact, of course. And there has been obviously a small, shouldn't say small, but a financial impact that we're monitoring as it is. I do have a short PowerPoint because I wanted to just go through a process just for a couple minutes if I can with council. If I can get my PowerPoint to open here. Can you see that?
Sorry, Paul. Councilor Barnhart, can you see the screen?
Yes, I can, Mayor.
Okay, please proceed, Paul.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. So these are some effects that we sort of pulled together, just a bit of a visual. So just going to minimize my thing here. So again, it goes back to when it came into effect and why it was put in effect. Proof of vaccination program for participation in higher transmission risk activities as part of the program. This is the process I wanted to just quickly walk through, just so council and the public and that are maybe watching just understand what the process administration goes through when there's either a new health order or an amended health order, and what we have to do. So city staff review the changes immediately once there's an announcement made. We then have to wait for the health order to come. We also get guidance documents from Alberta Health. They also post information on the website. And we also look at what other municipalities in our areas, especially around rec, what they're doing. And the health order, the guidance documents, the AHS website do not automatically come out once there's an announcement. Some cases we've waited up to a week or if not longer for a health order to show up. So we do rely a lot on interpretation of what others are doing, and we monitor the website. Sometimes we get a chance to talk to a health inspector about it. We typically meet 24 hours after an announcement is made with staff to discuss what we interpret to be changes and what we may have to do to our operations. Obviously, we'll seek clarification on stuff if there is some ambiguity around it. And when you look at these public health orders, they are quite extensive and they're open to interpretation, which we do see, and that's kind of an ongoing issue. We will look for clarity through the Public Health Inspector Office, BizConnect, the MLA's office. Sometimes we wait a couple days for that to happen. Clarification is hopefully then received and we implement the final plan. So we have to secure or adjust resources. Some of this, by the way, Mayor and Council, some of this work goes on after hours or on the weekends when we get these announcements on a Friday. So admin has to do a lot of quick interpretation and reacting because we need to get communications out. So that leads to the last box here. Communications for staff, if there's any training required for guest services at the front desk, for example, user groups, leaseholders, the public in general, and council if there's something significant. So there's a lot of layers to just one simple tweak, even if you will, can cause a lot of work for many people. So option one was to implement the REP, requiring proof of vaccination negative rapid test result, or the rapid test result to continue operating. All activities were allowed with no capacity issues or distancing requirements. Masks are required indoors when you're not participating in a physical activity. If you didn't go with the REP, you would have to basically grind adult sport to almost non-existent. Restrictions would then be implemented for capacity for both spectators and participants. You'd have to maintain your physical distancing, and no adult may attend an indoor location or for the purposes of participating in a group physical activity. So any adult activity would have stopped if we hadn't implemented the REP. And I think going back to my earlier comment, council at the time had given the direction to admin to provide the service to as many people as possible. So that was the obvious choice, was to operate under the REP. So this is just a quick snapshot of the plan. We implement screening agent at the BSRC and the community center and Ken Nickel Door. We hired security for that purpose. We did not have dedicated staff resources to sit there for our continued hours of operation to just do that task. Resource needed when we make a change or to implement the REP was communication of a program to the community. Additional staff, security obviously come into play. There's 115 hours a week to monitor the BSRC door, 80 hours at the community center, 80 hours at the Ken Nickel. We obviously manage the security as best we can to minimize costs, because if there's nothing booked at the community center during the day, we wouldn't have anybody sitting there doing nothing. So we have to monitor that basically week to week to see when we can schedule that security. So we do have added costs with that. There's been some reaction to the REP, especially in the first couple of weeks. We had some challenges with both staff and security, with people that were not happy with this request or other potentially contributing factors. However, the benefits definitely outweigh those risks, where we're offering all the services that we can. Child minding can run. You don't need to book appointments in the gym. And of course, the ultimate goal is public health. We're lowering the risk of exposure to our users. So a brief history, and I'm almost done here, Council. September 15, 2021, we started. All guests 12 and older will be asked to provide photo ID and proof of one of the following, which was vaccination, documentation of medical exemption, or a negative test within 72 hours. September 19th came along, and there was new information that we had to adjust to, that 12 to 17-year-olds would not be required to show proof of identification. September 20th, changed the requirements again to allow youth and coaches supporting any youth participating in activity to not to be screened. Youth age 12 to 17 must show proof of vaccination or the exemption or a negative test result to enter facility if they're not participating in an activity, which means if they're coming to watch a sibling in an activity, they would be required to go through that screening. There was clarification that had to get around that youth activity, whereas youth activities would allow a parent or guardian to volunteer to help with the youth change or get ready for the activity without needing to provide that vaccination, negative test, or exemption letter. Coaches, instructors, trainers, referees for youth activities who are 18 or older are subject to the health measures or REP requirements in the facility. Parents who are required to support youth in their activities would be allowed to follow REP requirements to attend. So all these were happening on the fly between the initial announcement on the 15th of September to September 25th. All this was being clarified, and this is just illustrating for council just what was going on in the background with these the implementation piece of the REP. Again, October 28th of 21, there was a change without an announcement, which was caught through our recreation channels, where youth 12-17 participating in an activity where adults were also participating. So example, public swimming, drop-in sports where there was all ages allowed, they would have to participate in the screening for vaccination, exemption, or the negative test. Youth activities where all participants are under 17, not including the coach, are exempt from the program. We did receive further clarification at that time from the MLA's office, stating that proof of vaccination was only required for youth visiting or spectating. It's not required for youth participating in a physical activity. That's the timeline just that I went over there verbally. As you can see, the pinch points since the 15th to October 28th, where we're operating from October 28th to today as is. Challenges that we have seen, Mayor and Council, were frustrated patrons, initially confusion with user groups, the number of changes that were happening between the 15th and October 28th. We're implementing the changes quickly and sometimes with little to no notice. The staff hours that are going on, taking you away from regular duties to continually be on top of those changes and adjusting the plan to implement, communicating to the user groups, members of the public, managing security changes to our agreement with them. As far as scheduling goes, any change that's announced, we have to make sure that not only our staff are up to speed, but obviously the security guard at the door knows who they're supposed to check and for what purpose. We've had a few disgruntled people, and that's just their choice. And they've either not participated, turned away, they've had to leave, come back with their paperwork at the time, whatever it was. Those are some of the things we've seen in the last couple months. And the third piece was the financial impact. We did have a bunch of membership cancellations. We factored around $12,000, $12,500. Rental cancellations were estimated around $20,000. Many factors. We don't really ask why. We suspect there's either members that are not willing to comply with the requirements or can't, depending on what the particular request was, what the booking was. And then, of course, there's the security that has come at a cost to manage the door and check our people coming and going. So not an insignificant amount of money. However, it is unfortunately a cost of doing business in this world that we have and what we're allowed to operate in. And that's the end of my PowerPoint. So with that, Your Worship, I will conclude my report on the impact of the REP.
Thank you, Mr. Suter. Any questions from council for Mr. Suter on his presentation on the REP program update? Councilor McCook, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Daniluk. Mayor Daniluk, through to Mr. Suter. So I guess you spoke a little bit about the security. Have people been respectful kind of since we've put the security in? And is this something that we believe we need to continue with, or could we shift back to or shift to potentially having staff do it? I know you spoke about some staff shortages. Just wondering about that.
Through Your Worship, Councilor McCook, we obviously don't want to keep security there long term, and I don't think we'll need to. I think that the more this becomes commonplace and the longer it goes, it's unlikely we'll need them for a long time. But again, we're not sure where we're headed here because, with every variant announcement, we have to sort of be prepared for maybe something changing. So we have needed them very much so, especially in the beginning. We've had to have people physically removed from one of the rec centers a few times over now for a variety of reasons. So there's definitely a calming presence with her there as opposed to us having a staff member, which we actually do not have a staff member available to sit there because at the BSRC, for example, we're operating 7 days a week up to 16 hours a day. So it's quite taxing on staff. So having that security person there is also an ability to do patrols throughout the building for wristbands or anything else we might need them to do. So it's an unfortunate that we require them, but they've definitely been something we have leaned on heavily here, especially in the initial implementation.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Suter. Sorry, Councillor CEO Schwartz, to follow up before I go to Councillor McCook for any follow-up questions.
Certainly,
Mike,
thank you.
floor.
And everything Paul says, support 100%. His group has been living this from day one and have been bobbing and weaving and keeping as many services open as possible. The direction we've been given for the province on the REP is that it is a temporary measure. So we are anticipating at some point it's going to disappear. And when that does, we probably go back to normal operations. I will also add that Paul and his group have done a remarkable job with the help of finance on recouping all or most of those costs. So we're in line. There have been some incidents, Paul, that I know you didn't get into details, where we were glad we had the security guard there to keep our residents safe. I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO Schwartz. Councillor McCook, follow up.
Yeah. Do you believe that some of the loss in revenue for the rental spaces was more due to the restrictions surrounding what we were allowed for indoor spaces and numbers and stuff like that?
Through your worship to Councillor McCook, I don't have the details on exactly why those rental bookings would have been canceled. There could have been a combination of factors for sure. Maybe the particular group couldn't meet those requirements of the REP or didn't want to meet them. I'm not really sure. We'd have to delve into each individual cancellation to know that.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Van Nieuwkerk, in a moment. I'll come back to you, Kathy, in case you have any questions. Councillor Van Nieuwkerk, you have the floor, Steve.
Yeah, thank you to Councillor McCook for talking about the security group that we have there. Just a question for administration. Have you, I guess we hope that the REP is a temporary program and we expect that it's, going to disappear at some point. That's the direction we continue to be given, like the CEO just said, but have you given consideration, administration, to exploring what it would take to have our own security folks in Beaumont, like to have Beaumont staff trained as security people, or cross-training bylaw, or getting creative in that regard, to see if this need for security does become longer term, how could we bring those costs down? It just occurred to me as we were talking about this. I wonder if you've pondered that a bit. Thank you.
Through your worship to Councillor Van Nieuwkerk, yes, we haven't really looked at it in detail yet. We've been hopeful this would go away soon, but the longer this goes, I think we certainly have to look at that as an option, a more cost-effective option. And again, I go back to my earlier comment. I think the waters are calming significantly from where they were a couple months ago on that front, as far as any issues at the front desk. So I think we can probably get there. We have budgeted for one more year of security if need be. Hopefully we don't need them, but like CAO said, we're hoping we can get rid of that, but we're just wait and see. But yes, we are looking at definitely options longer term.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you very much. Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Mayor. And a comment and then a question. The comment, first off, is to echo what I heard from CAO Schwartz, is that I do think the staff have gone over and above, and they deserve a huge thank you from all the residents for helping keep us safe from this pandemic, throughout this pandemic. The question I have for Mr. Suter: have rentals bounced back up? Are we starting to see groups coming back? Or is it still having an effect in loss of revenue this year as well?
Through your worship to Councillor Barnhart, we are very busy. So I don't have those numbers in front of me as far as if there's a trend coming back on just specifically on rentals, but we are very busy. So I would, just by looking at it, I would say, yes, things are coming back.
Thank you again for all you're doing. Appreciate it.
See no further questions from council. I have none myself, so I'll ask McWinter to put the motion up on the screen to receive this report as information. I'll ask for a councillor to make this motion when it appears on the screen. Is there a councillor willing to make this motion, please? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mayor Daniluk. I move that the December 14th, 2021 report on the impact of the restriction exemption program at the Beaumont recreation facilities be received for information.
Thank you very much. Council, discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Barnhart, how do you vote?
In favor, Mayor.
Thank you. That passes 6-0. Thank you. Unanimous vote. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Suter.
Thank you.
Business on our agenda is the 2022-2023 2022 budget and 2022-2026 financial plans, adoption and approval. How we're going to proceed is I will ask Mr. DeBlanco for a brief overview of the budget, and then I will make the motion to, as per the outline on the budget, and we will then ask for questions from council before we proceed to vote. Okay. Mr. DeBlanco, you have the floor, please.
Thank you. Good evening to the mayor and council. Before you this evening is a request for decision to adopt the 2022 budget, which is divided into three separate budgets: the municipal operating for tax levy funded operations, utility operating, and capital. Administration presented a proposed budget at the November 9th regular council meeting, and council held budget meetings on December 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 7th. So for that reason, I'm not going to go through the report in great detail, but we'll provide a brief summary. Municipal governments within the province of Alberta are required to adopt an annual operating and capital budget by December 31st of the previous year. This consolidated budget is focused on stabilizing, maintaining, and sustaining service delivery, continuing transformational projects, and building a path for post-pandemic recovery. Please note that between budget approval tonight, if adopted, and when the tax rate bylaw is set in April, additional information will become available, specifically education requisition amounts and the finalized assessment numbers. If approved by council, the 2022 municipal operating budget would result in a 2.4% tax levy increase. For a typical homeowner with a house valued at $420,000, this tax increase would result in approximately $73 in an annual increase to the municipal property tax bill. If adopted by council, the 2022 capital budget may result in future impacts on the operating budget. Administration will try and manage this impact on the operating budget without an increase to property taxes, but if required, it may result in a property tax increase for the 2023 operating budget. And if adopted by city council, the 2022 utility operating budget would result in an increase to the typical homeowner's utility bill of approximately $10 per month. So with that, before council are three recommendations: that the 2022 municipal operating budget, including a general municipal tax levy of $23,146,700, which approximates a 2.4% tax increase, revenue requirements for requisitions of $8,017,300, and non-tax revenue at $60,940,500, which total revenues matching expenses at $48,104,500 be adopted, and that the 2022 capital budget with revenues matching expenses of $11,227,000 be adopted, and that the 2022 utility operating budget with revenues matching expenses at $9,827,200 be adopted.
Thank you, Mr. DeBlanco. I'll ask for the motion to be up on the screen, which I just see it now. Thank you. So Mr. DeBlanco read that already. Should I read it myself as the motion maker? Should I, or is that required, do you think, for procedural purposes? Thank you. I will move that the 2022 budget and 2022-26 financial plans and be adopted as presented. Discussion on the motion, council. Any questions from Mr. DeBlanco or administration on the budget? Councilor Van Nieuwkerk, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Daniluk, through to Mr. DeBlanco and administration. Just wanted to confirm the attachment in the agenda. It still includes tonight aspects that were unfunded. I think there's 5 pages included that were unfunded. So just to confirm, when this is approved, finalized, and the PDF is finalized, the unfunded things will be removed because they weren't funded in the budget. Is that a correct assumption?
So through the mayor to Councillor Van Nieuwkerk, we've included the items as unfunded as they were, and I'm assuming if we're speaking about items that were not funded by council, they were included as they were deliberated, they were contemplated by administration. If it's council's will, administration can remove them, but they're presented as they were presented in the proposed budget.
Yeah, thank you. No, just yeah, for me, when the budget is all rolled up and done, my preference would be that the budget is approved based upon what we did do, not what we didn't do. So, if we look at it through that lens, what I would say is that the PDF document would have all the new numbers that pertain to all the stuff that we did do. And because we had a robust discussion about what we didn't do and we made those decisions already. So that's my personal view on that. And for the rest, thank you for the presentation and happy to see what council thinks.
Okay. On that,
Mr. Mayor, just a quick point of clarification that I've noticed.
yes.
The two numbers on the capital budget and the utility budget are reversed. So if we can adjust those motions so that the capital budget is 9,827,000 and then the utility budget is switched.
Oh. A little detail we need to get clarified, I guess. Okay,
Definitely.
so we'll make that change and I will make a friendly amendment to my own motion that reflects the proper numbers as Mr. DeBlanco just outlined. And I'll wait for that to be on the screen. And to clarify, once the numbers are there, that the capital budget is revenues matching 9,827,200. Maybe lose 10 there if you could, Ms. Winter. Thank you very much. And that the utility operating budget with revenues matching expenses at 11,227,000 even. Okay. Thank you, Mr. DeBlanco, for catching that. Subsequent to Councilor Van Nieuwkerk's comment, Mr. DeBlanco, I do believe in previous budgets, we had left the unfunded positions or topics or projects in the actual final budget document. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Council, is there any appetite to entertain Councilor Van Nieuwkerk's suggestion that the unfunded positions and or projects and so on be deleted from the final budget document? I understand what you're saying, Steve. Personally, I think I like the idea of saying this is what we've done. I know where you're coming from, but I prefer to leave them in there as a more matter of record. Personally, I'm not hugely opposed to the idea, but I'm not overly excited either. So I'm not on the fence. I usually am not on the fence, but I'm kind of going to sit there on the fence today on that one. Any other councilors, any concerns? Or do you wish to make a motion, Steve, to that effect, if you so wish to? Councilor Van Nieuwkerk?
Yeah, you bet. No, I'm not prepared to make a motion on it. I just think as a matter of what we do, we should communicate to the public what we do, not what we didn't do. So, but I won't make a motion on it. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any further discussion from council on the suggestion? Seeing none. Are there any further questions or comments on the budget before I call for the vote on the budget for 2022 and
I have one.
2023?
Mayor.
Oh, Councilor Barnhart, sorry.
That's okay. You're very good at remembering me. I just thought I'd interject because I thought you were moving a little quick. And I understand that. My question is regarding the strategic coordinator that was, we dealt with it through a funding source coming out of capital. At least that's how I wrote it down in my notes, and I hope I didn't forget something here. But I also noticed in the budget that came out that I read, I couldn't see where we had agreed that it would be a 2-year term position. Did that change, and did I miss that in the conversation?
Mr. DeBlanco, I believe you have the floor, but it was a 2-year term, if I remember correctly.
Yes, through the mayor to Councilor Barnhart. Yes, it's incorporated as a 2-year term in the 5-year financial plan. Obviously, that has, other than changing the funding source, that doesn't have an impact on the 2022 budget. But in terms of the 5-year capital plan, it's shown as a 2-year term position.
Okay, because when I did look at it, Mr. DeBlanco, it looked like it continued on for the 5 years, but maybe there's something else in there that I'm not aware of. Maybe you could just have a double check that that is showing correctly on the chart. I can't bring all of that documentation up on my computer at the same time with the screen, but I appreciate that that was council's understanding and that you've confirmed that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Barnhart. Before I call for the vote on the budget, one last comment for myself. I want to thank administration for the work on the budget. It's a huge amount of work. People really don't understand how much work goes into a budget. And as I get more and more into my career as a councilor, now mayor, I can appreciate how much work there is. Council administration for toughing out 4 nights away from our families in the evenings to look after the budget. You open to the public to listen to how the budget deliberations happen, and it's a lot of work. And I want to thank councils for their diligence. In those 4 nights, we've come up with a very, very acceptable budget. 1.4% for the RCMP, 1% to run the city. With inflation running 3-4%, that's a very, very good budget. And with no reduction in service and no reduction in staff, it's an excellent budget, in my opinion, compared to our municipalities in the region. So with that, I will call for the vote, council, on the 2022 budget and 2022-26 operating capital budget. Please vote accordingly. Councillor Barnhart, your vote, please.
Yes, I'm in favor, Mayor.
Thank you. And that passed unanimously, 6-0. Thank you, council. Next on our agenda is 7C, Subdivision and Development Appeal Board Member Composition Report. And I believe we are going to hear from, Ms. Bajega. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mayor Daniluk and members of council. I'm Sandy Bajaya, Director of Legal and Legislative Services, and I'm pleased to present this report to you. As council will recall, at its November 23rd meeting, there was a motion directing administration to prepare a report on the advisability of eliminating councillors from the membership of the Subdivision Development and Appeal Board, or SDAB. Administration was also directed to prepare an amending bylaw to the current SDAB bylaw to change the current membership should council wish to pursue that change. This report is before you today. I will spend a few minutes going over the report and then I'll invite your questions. As most of you already know, the Municipal Government Act requires that a council establish a subdivision development appeal board or enter into agreement with other municipalities to establish such a board. When council establishes an SDAB, it does so by passing a bylaw that sets out the terms of reference, mandate, and procedures for the board. The MGA includes several other requirements for an SDAB. Some examples of these requirements are about the clerk and board member training, as well as limitations to the membership. So for example, no employee of the municipality or an employee or a member of the Planning Commission is eligible to be a member of the SDAB. When it comes to councillors, the MGA does not exclude members of council from being appointed to an SDAB, but it does limit the number of councillors that may serve on a hearing panel at any one time. So only one member of council may serve on a panel. It's not uncommon for municipalities to appoint councillors to their SDABs. In some instances, such as smaller municipalities, councils may struggle to find enough public member volunteers to form an SDAB, and thus they rely on their elected officials to fill that gap. Also, elected officials are often very community-minded, and they may want to be considered for the municipality's SDAB to help support the municipality and the community. Other councils make a conscious choice to have their respective SDABs comprised entirely of public members. The reason for this approach is that the SDAB has a quasi-judicial or quasi-legal purpose that requires adherence to the principles of natural justice, which includes the right to an unbiased decision maker, among other things. Simply put, because council is part of the decision-making process for land use matters and bylaws, there is a risk that parties appearing before an SDAB panel that includes a councillor may feel or believe that the SDAB is not an unbiased decision maker, or that there is a lack of procedural fairness. The other consideration is councillor time. Councillors, as you well know, are appointed to quite a few council committees and many external boards, agencies, and commissions. Many of these entities require an elected official to be appointed on behalf of the municipality. For example, only an elected official can be appointed to the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Board or the Leduc Regional Housing Foundation. We have to be represented by a member of council. For this reason, it's prudent for a council to be mindful of how they're devoting and allocating their councillor time. Ultimately, provided that the MGA requirements are met, the composition of the SDAB is a council decision made by way of bylaw. The city's current SDAB bylaw provides that the board's membership is made up of 3 councillors and 4 public members. So that's what we currently have. If council wishes to change the membership of the SDAB, an amending bylaw is required. Attachment 1 of the report provides a proposed amending bylaw for this purpose. The amending bylaw removes the councillor members from the membership of the SDAB and increases the public members from 4 to 5. Since all public members are eligible to participate on any hearing panel of the SDAB, there is no need to add more than 1 public member to the current SDAB. If council is satisfied with the proposed changes to the composition of the SDAB, then council may give the amending bylaw readings tonight. If the amending bylaw is passed, administration will be able to use the recent public member recruitment to bring forward a proposed candidate, a public member, to fill the new vacancy at the next council meeting. This concludes my very brief presentation, and I will open it up to questions from council.
Thank you, Ms. Bajia. So point of order question, should I ask for first reading to be passed first, then second, and then ask question of administration, or ask administration questions first before I go to first reading? Which do
Mayor
you prefer?
Danlick, you can feel free to open the floor to questions if council would like to ask questions at this point, or if a member of council would like to put first reading on the floor, that's also fair.
Thank you. I will proceed with asking for first reading to be passed first, and then ask for questions of administration. Is there a member of council willing to move first reading of this proposed bylaw? Councilor Van Newkirk, you have the floor.
Yeah, Mayor Daniluk, I'd be pleased to move first reading. The bylaw 1007-21, a bylaw that amends the Subdivision and Development Appeal Board bylaw, be given first reading. Thank you.
Thank you. All's in favor of the motion? Councilor Barnhart, how do you vote?
In favor, Mayor.
Thank you. That passes unanimously, 6-0. Thank you very much, council. At this point, I'll open it up to a motion to give second reading, at which time I'll ask for questions from council of administration. Is there a council willing to move second reading of the bylaw? Councilor Tessier, you have the floor.
That bylaw 1007-21 be given second reading.
Thank you, councilor. Questions on the motion, or sorry, discussion on the motion, please. Any questions for administration on this bylaw, please? Councilor Barnhart, do you wish to have any questions?
No, Mayor, I think we've reached a point where this makes ultimate sense to do so. I'm supportive of the motion.
Thank you very much. See no further questions. I will call for the vote on second reading. Please vote accordingly. Councilor Barnhart, for the record, please state your vote, please.
In favor of second reading.
Thank you, councilor. That also passes 6-0 unanimously. So before we go to third reading of the evening, I do require unanimous consent for third reading. Do I have unanimous consent for third reading? Councilor Barnhart, do you concur?
Yes, I do, sir.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, is there, oh, sorry, Ms. Winter, did I miss a step?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to confirm that we do need a vote for consent to go into third reading. We do need to vote on that.
We do. I thought it could be just verbal.
No, thank
Okay.
No, Mayor, it needs to
All
be a
right.
vote. Thank you.
My mistake. Thank you for clarifying the procedure. So council, I will require you to vote for consensus to move to third reading. Give me 1 second here. Please vote accordingly. Councilor Barnhart, your vote, please.
Yes, in favor.
Thank you. That passed unanimously, 6-0. Thank you. So we have consensus to move to third reading. Is a member of council willing to move third reading of this bylaw? Councilor McCook, you have the floor.
So moved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Council, I will call for the vote on third reading. Please vote accordingly. Councilor Barnhart.
In favor.
Thank you. It also passes 6-0 unanimous consent on the vote. Thank you very much, council. Appreciate that. All right, moving on to the next item in our agenda is 7D, Public Board and Committee Appointments. And that will be presented by Ms. Winter. And before we go, Ms. Winter, you'll be presenting?
Actually, Mayor, I just wanted to point out that that was passed on consent agenda. So we would actually be going on to 8A.
Oh, my apologies. I didn't cross it on my list here. I apologize, council. 7D has been taken care of on the consent agenda. So now we move into 8A, bylaw 1006-21, Dance Row Meadows redistricting, first reading of the bylaw. And that's going to be presented by Ms. Sangster. Emily, you have the floor, please.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. My name is Emily Sangster. I'm a long-range planner with the city. I'll be presenting bylaw 1006-21 for redistricting in the Dance Row Meadows neighborhood for consideration for first reading. I'll provide a brief overview of the application, and I'll then be happy to respond to any clarifying questions that you might have. So the subject lands for this proposal are in the Dance Row Meadows neighborhood along a planned but currently unbuilt segment of Dance Row Way. The applicant is Stantec Consulting Limited on behalf of Anthem United Communities Limited, and they're proposing to amend the land use district map by redistricting 0.68 hectares of land from conventional neighborhood or CN district to integrated neighborhood or IN district, as shown in attachment 1. So by way of background for this application, when the city adopted the current land use bylaw 944-19, its land use districts were applied throughout the city in accordance with the land use planning framework that was in effect at the time. So in Dance Row Meadows, the districts were meant to be consistent with those that had been in place under the previous land use bylaw, and also with the land use concept that was set out in the approved Dance Row Meadows outline plan. And you can see that land use concept in attachment 2. So the conventional neighborhood district was applied to most areas of Dance Row Meadows, including the area of the neighborhood that was planned under the outline plan, but had not yet been subdivided. And the intention of this district is to provide opportunities for lower density forms of residential development that are similar to what currently exists in Beaumont. The outline plan also provides for street-oriented townhomes along a segment of Dance Row Way. And at the time land use bylaw 944-19 was adopted, a portion of this segment had recently been redistricted accordingly as a direct control district under the previous land use bylaw, and the associated subdivision had been approved. Because the townhomes need lots that are narrower than the minimum lot size permitted in the conventional neighborhood district in our new bylaw, the integrated neighborhood district was applied to this subdivided portion when bylaw 944-19 was adopted. And the intention of the integrated neighborhood district is to provide a variety of housing options with integrated local commercial and business opportunities, primarily in greenfield areas. So with that background, the applicant now wishes to subdivide land to develop the remaining townhomes that are identified along Dance Row Way in the outline plan, but that were not included in the previous redistricting and subdivision that I was just mentioning. And so this redistricting from conventional neighborhood to integrated neighborhood is needed before the subdivision can take place to reflect the narrower lot widths of these townhomes and to be consistent with the district that is already in place for comparable townhome lots along the same street. This redistricting proposal has been circulated to nearby landowners and relevant technical agencies through our usual circulation process, and we have not received any concerns via that process. If approved, this proposal will allow the lands to be developed in accordance with the approved Dance Row Meadows outline plan, council's strategic plan, and the city's overall land use planning framework. And so administration supports the adoption of this redistricting. Just a procedural note, if the bylaw receives first reading this evening, a public hearing would be needed. This is anticipated to be held on January 25th of next year. And following the hearing, council would have the opportunity to consider second and third reading of the bylaw. So that's a very brief overview of this application. If there are any clarifying questions, I'd be pleased to respond.
Thank you, Ms. Sandster. So clarification, point of order for council. First reading is, you now have the opportunity now to ask clarifying questions of the first reading. First reading does not require or not allow for any kind of debate for or against the bylaw. It's more a matter of a clarifying questions before we call for first reading. Do any council members have any questions of a clarifying nature on first reading? Ms. Barnhart, any questions?
Not at this time, Mayor.
Thank you. Oh, Councilor Van Newkirk, you have the floor, Steve.
Yeah, thank you. Just around the Stantec figure, through you, Mayor Daniluk, to administration, I see that there is a proposed emergency access along the north side put onto that figure, and there is a lack of connection between Rue Montelay and Dansra way. And I understand that, you know, this redistricting would have to be put into place before they can do more in that area. Is there any knowledge of the timeline on that road connection? And if you could explain to me the requirement and of the emergency route that Stantec has included on the figure. I'm just wondering what makes them put that there, and you know, how soon do we see a road connection from this? Let me know if I wasn't clear.
Ms. Sangster, are you able to provide some answers if you're able to, please?
Through your worship to Councillor Van Newkirk, I just want to confirm that we're speaking about attachment 2, that sort of double-ended red arrow leading out to Township Road 510. I may defer this question to Mr. Wong. I'm not super certain of the timing of this one, but he may be able to respond.
Through the mayor to Councillor Van Newkirk, my name is Johannes Wong, and I'm the manager of Long Range Planning. And to answer Councillor Van Newkirk's questions with regarding to the timing of the provision of that emergency access, currently the administration doesn't have the timeline. It is developer driven, and the area that is in that corner has not been submitted yet, so there is no proposal for that yet. So
follow up.
Yeah, so at this time it's just on the map because it needs to be there, and then in the future it's developed and maintained and used. Is that why it shows up here?
Yeah, that is the concept of the area. So, but having said that, the outline plan may get amended before they get developed. So this is the current land use concept for the area. So,
okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you to our administration presenters on this topic. See no further questions. Councillor Barnhart, did I ask you already about this one? I did, didn't I?
In favor.
Okay, I haven't asked a motion yet. Just make sure you have any questions. Sorry, my mistake. Okay, no questions from you. We're good. All right, Council, I will ask Council member to make the motion on first reading, please. Councillor Miller, you have the floor, Ashley.
Thank you, Mayor Daniluk. I move that bylaw 1006-21 Dansra Meadows redistricting bylaw to amend bylaw 944-19, our zoning blueprint land use bylaw, be given first reading.
Thank you very much. Discussion on the motion? Councilor Martin, any discussion?
No, no discussion.
Thank you. I will call for the vote. Council, please vote accordingly. Councilor Barnhart?
In favor.
Thank you. That carries unanimously 6-0. Thank you. On that note, seeing 7:17, I'm going to call a 10-minute recess with 8B, the bylaw 10-00521, City of Beaumont Library Board bylaw. We are recessed. Thank you. Okay, with that, I will call the meeting back to order at roughly 7:26 this evening. Thank you very much for that short break. We are now going to continue with our agenda, which is now 8B, bylaw 10-005-21, City of Beaumont Library Board bylaw. Ms. Darje, you have the floor, please, to begin the presentation on the bylaw, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Worship. Good evening, Council, members of the public. I am Joanne Dargy, the Manager of Legal and Intergovernmental Relations, and here to present to you the revised Library Board bylaw on behalf of administration. Council established a municipal library board in accordance with the Libraries Act, and the Library Board bylaw was last presented to Council in 2019 regarding appointment of board members. On recent review of the financial requirements for the board, it was noted that the bylaw was no longer in compliance with the Act. Administration took this opportunity to review the other provisions of the bylaw to ensure clarity and consistency. Substantive changes to the bylaw are changes to the membership of the board to remove an alternate member of council. This is in section 5 of the bylaw. The Act no longer provides for that ability to have an alternate member of council appointed to the board. The province is currently conducting a red tape reduction review on the Libraries Act, and ministry staff have identified a number of suggested changes for clarity and efficiency. The current bylaw is in alignment with these proposed changes, with one exception. It provides that a member of the library board is eligible to be reappointed
for only 2 additional consecutive terms unless 2/3 of the whole council pass a resolution approving the member be reappointed for additional terms. The red tape reduction review proposes that a member of the board is eligible to be reappointed for only 2 additional consecutive terms of office, and then proposes to remove the requirement of 2/3 of council having to pass a resolution. Ministry rationale for this change is that it enables turnover of board members, which promotes stronger community representation and prevents board stagnation, and promotes a sense of individual ownership. As administration does not yet have information on whether this change is proceeding, we have drafted clause 9 of the proposed bylaw regarding consecutive terms to refer directly back to the provisions of the Act so that administration doesn't have to return to council for revision to this one clause, and it keeps the bylaw current regardless of the direction of the province. Section 16 of the proposed bylaw deals with the library budget and estimate. According to the Act, the library board is required to provide to council a budget and an estimate of the money required to operate and manage a library. Section 8 of the Library Act states that council may approve the estimate in whole or in part. However, the Act does not allow for council to approve the library budget. In other words, council has the authority to approve how much money the library board receives each year to operate, but it does not have the ability to approve or reject the board's budget. The proposed bylaw revises the budget clause to reflect this distinction. The proposed bylaw also removed a clause that had restricted the amount of surplus the library board could carry forward, and also removed a clause that required for the return of surplus funds to the city. Council does not have this ability to restrict any surplus or to claw back funds in this way. However, council can consider the approval of a lower estimate in years following surplus years. Administration has worked with the director of the Beaumont Library, Laura Winton, in drafting this revised bylaw, and Laura is also in attendance via Zoom should you have questions for her. Council may have noticed a new format for this bylaw. Administration is taking this time to introduce to council a new standard bylaw template, and as presented earlier, a standard amending bylaw template, which was the SDAB amending bylaw template, or amending bylaw. The template aims to provide certainty, predictability, clarity, and transparency for users. The template ensures consistency for users, and for ease of use, it separates the bylaw into parts and provides paragraph subheadings along the column. After this evening, this template will be used for all future bylaws presented to council, and existing bylaws will be reformatted into this template as part of a larger bylaw review project being undertaken in 2022. This concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions council may have on the proposed library board bylaw or the new template.
Thank you, Ms. Dargy. I think I'll follow the same procedure. I will call for first reading and then second reading, and then ask for questions of our presenter. So is there a council willing to move first reading of the library board bylaw? Councillor Tessier, you have the floor.
That bylaw 1005-21, the City of Beaumont Library Board bylaw be given first reading.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll ask for the vote. Councillor Barnhart, how do you vote?
In favor of first reading, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Council. That passes 6-0 unanimously. Is there a member of council willing to move second reading of the proposed bylaw? Councillor Van Nieuwkerk.
Yeah, Mayor Danlock, pleased to move second reading. The bylaw 1005-21 be given second reading. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Van Nieuwkerk. Discussion on the motion, please. Any questions for our presenter on the bylaw in front of us this evening? Councillor Barnhart, do you have any questions?
Not at this time, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Van Nieuwkerk, you have the floor, Steve.
Thank you. I'm a sucker for a nice template and I like it. So just a comment. Thank you.
Actually, I thought you might mention, I know you're a template kind of guy, which is not a bad thing. It'll get us more streamlined. I think that'll be great for us. So my understanding, Mr. RG, if I could, is that this bylaw is actually sort of a house cleaning type of bylaw to clean up some of the details of the previous bylaw that need to be updated. Is that a fair assessment?
Mayor, thank you, Worship.
many of the clauses were housekeeping items, and to make sure that the bylaw was in compliance with the act, as some of the regulations that were in the bylaw were outdated. So it is, yes, an updating.
Thank you very much. All right, I will call for the question on the, I'll call for the vote, pardon me, on the second reading. Council, please vote accordingly. Councillor Barnhart.
In favor of second reading, Mayor.
Thank you. That also passes 6-0 unanimously. Thank you, Council. I will now, because we're asking for third reading this evening, I will ask for a consensus. Is there a motion for consensus on to move to third reading? Sorry, do I make a motion for consensus or just ask for consensus and they vote? I forget now, just so I'm clear. Oh, hang on a second. Ms. Winter, please, can you clarify?
Thank you, Mayor. You do need a mover of this motion. It's no different than any other motions.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a member of council willing to move consideration for third reading? Councillor McCook, you have the floor. Oh, hang on. There you go.
I move that bylaw 1005-21 be considered for third reading.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, council, I'll ask you to vote accordingly. Councillor Barnhart, how do you vote for consensus for third reading?
In favor.
Thank you. Council, that passes 6-0 unanimously again. Thank you very much. Is there a member of council willing to move third reading of the bylaw? Councillor Barnhart, how about you?
That sounds like a good idea. I was going to jump in there and say that, that bylaw 1005-21 be given third reading.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Please vote accordingly, Council. Councillor Barnhart, your vote, please.
In favor.
Thank you. Council, that passes also 6-0. Thank you, Ms. Dargy, for your presentation. Thank you, Council. All right, moving on to the next part of our agenda, 8C, bylaw 1004-21, fees and charges, first, second, and third reading. And that will be presented by, I believe, Mr. DeBlanco. If you could please present as you need to on this bylaw. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before you this evening is the consideration of bylaw 1004-21, which is the 2022 fees and charges bylaw. Before you is consideration for first, second, and third reading. So each year, Beaumont's fees and charges bylaw, and which is attachment 1, is reviewed and updated by the respective service areas of each department. Changes are made based on both operational considerations and then are evaluated for reasonableness. The 2022 fees and charges were discussed with council at budget deliberations, and as part of these deliberations, council passed a motion directing admin to amend the 2022 fees and charges bylaw so not-for-profit groups may access meeting rooms in city facilities at a discounted rate. Any increase in fees and charges assists in providing funding for direct services to residents, business, and developers to reduce the impact on property taxes. The proposed increases are in place after third and final reading of this bylaw and are reflected in the 2022 budget. That concludes my presentation on the bylaw. Admin can take any questions council and the mayor may have at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll follow the same procedures before. I will ask for a motion for a first reading, please. Remember, council, when you make that motion. Councilor Miller, you have the floor, please, Ashley.
Fees, rates, and charges for municipal services to give in first reading.
Thank you very much. Council, I'll ask for the vote on first reading. Councilor Varner, how do you vote?
In favor of first reading, Mayor.
Thank you. That passes 6-0 unanimously. Thank you, council. Is there a member of council willing to move second reading before we go to discussion? Councilor Tessier.
Thank you, Mayor. That bylaw 1004-21 be given second reading.
Thank you, Councillor. Council, any questions on the motion? Any question from administration regarding fees and charges for the next year? Councillor McCook, you have the floor, Catherine.
Thank you, Mayor Daniluk. I have a couple questions. I noticed that there are charges for the tennis courts on page 198 of the agenda. Is this new?
Mr. DeBlanco.
Sure. Through the mayor to Councillor McCook. I believe this is new, but I'll revert to Mr. Suter, who I believe is on the line. He should have the answer to that question.
Thank you.
Mr. Suter?
Through your worship to Councilor McCook, that caught me off guard there. I'm just going to have to check on that if I can answer that in a moment, please.
Yeah,
No
we'll wait
problem.
for you, Paul. Please take your time.
Yeah, page 198, there's tennis court and outdoor rink.
Is there a subsequent question, Councilor McCook, while he's looking up the answer on that one possibly, or I go to Councilman Newkirk, if you don't mind coming back to Paul?
Sure. I guess my next question would probably be for Paul as well.
Okay, let's come back
Do
to
you
you if you don't mind,
Sure,
and we give
yeah.
Mr. Suter a chance to find that. Councilman Newkirk, you have the floor, please. Oh, hang on. There you go.
Yeah, I'm not being helpful if it just ends up with Paul as well, but let me try. The food truck vendors, I'm just wondering, Mr. DeBlanco, is there a delta or a change in the food truck vendor cost per day? Do you recall that? It's on the same page. It's at 150 a day.
Okay, through the mayor to Councillor Van Newkirk. I'm just going to look up the change tracking document we have to see if there's a change. I don't know the particular one off the food for food trucks off the top of my head. Sorry.
Yeah, and that's okay.
No problem. We'll come back
I'm
to.
sorry. I'm being told it is the same amount as last year.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Yes, I don't recall, so thank you.
Okay, we'll give it a moment or two. Are there any other questions from council regarding fees and charges that we didn't have a chance to debate the other night during the budget deliberations? Seeing none, I'll just wait a moment for Mr. Suter to get back to us, and Mr. DeBlanc, whoever's hands up first gets the prize, boys. Mr. Suter, you look excited to talk.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't know if excited is the right word. I'm going to take a stab at this. I was trying to get some clarification in the background, but these are new, and I believe the intention for both the outdoor rink and the tennis course is for if someone wanted to book an exclusive hour for their function or something. So I think we were looking at that as an option. It's rarely asked for, but if it is, we would like to have a charge for that.
Thank you, Paul. That does make sense. Actually, one of our earlier comments to talk about that, so that does make sense. Councillor McCook, I'll go back to you before I go back to Steve. So Catherine, you have the floor for follow-up.
Thank you, Mayor Danlock, and thank you, Paul. That definitely makes sense. My next question is surrounding the fees and charges for the nonprofits to use the boardrooms. I noticed that we just addressed it with one or two boardrooms in one building. Can you just give me the rationale for not applying it to the rec center as well as the Ken Nickel?
For your worship, the Councilor Cook. Yeah, we looked at the intent of your motion was to secure a usable meeting space. I understand. So at a discounted rate for regular users, monthly meetings, that sort of thing. The community center boardroom addresses that the best because the other spaces are typically programmed or booked already. So not to say it couldn't happen, but we tried to look at what were the best solution for a group to rent for meeting, and the boardrooms in the community center would be the best. So that's the background. There's a lot of different ways you could look at this. It's just trying to get something in place for this year, and we can always adjust it as need be in the future.
Okay, thank you. Yep, that definitely makes sense. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councilman Newkirk, Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah. I really appreciate the tennis court and outdoor rink being bookable now. I think that probably alleviates maybe some of the potential for conflict when someone wants to come and use the space exclusively when it's most often a drop-in space. Not fees and charges bylaw related, but is at the same time, when I think about rentable spaces in other communities, there's often a placard there that would indicate that the space is rented today to a certain group. It might be helpful to the community to consider something like that. Again, I know not fees and charges related, except it kind of is. So just a comment, Mayor Dunlap, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Operational, but a good suggestion. Thanks, Steve. Appreciate that. Mr. Blanco, do you have a chance to come back to us with the answer, or do you need a little more time?
Sorry, on which particular question?
It was a change. You were looking at a change thing or something, or you already addressed that question?
I believe all of the questions were
Okay,
addressed.
sorry,
at this
it's my
point.
mistake.
Sorry.
No worries. Councilor Miller, you have a question? Councilor, actually, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Daniluk. Yeah, just to feed off of Mr. Van Nieuwkerk's comment there, I like the fact that the tennis court and the outdoor rink are also bookable, but this kind of plays off of the inquiry that I had regarding the schedule, because I just not really sure how that's going to work for residents to know if it's bookable or where it's going to be posted, like Mr. Van Nieuwkerk said. So it's more of just a comment, and I don't know if anyone has an answer of how that's going to work at this point, but that's all.
Mr. Suter, do you want to respond to that if you can, just briefly?
Yeah, through your worship, Councilor Miller, we're looking at that as well, how best to roll that out. Obviously, communications is going to be a part and parcel with all this. So we haven't landed exactly how it's going to be delivered, but yeah, and as Councilor Van Nieuwkerk's point as well, I think we would have to put signage up regardless. So introducing that as an option as part of that signage for if it's exclusively booked, will be part of that. So thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Councilor Barnhart, do you have any questions for second reading?
Thank you, Mayor. Not a question, but a comment and a request perhaps for a year from now when we're looking at the next budget. I think it would be really helpful if we could have highlighted just in yellow or whatever color the changes, the areas that have been changed, because this was a bit difficult unless I didn't receive one, and that was done for other members of council. But on the copy I received, I really couldn't tell what had changed. So I would appreciate that in the future if possible. But other than that, I'm fine. Thank you.
Thank you. See no further questions. I will call for the vote on second reading. Council, please vote accordingly. Councilor Barnhart, how do you vote?
In favor, Mayor.
Thank you. That passes 6-0. Unanimous vote. Thank you very much. I will now ask for a motion to consider third reading. Is there a member of council willing to make that motion? Actually, I'll do it. That bylaw 10004-21 be considered for third reading. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Council, how do you vote, please, on this one? Councilor Barnhart?
In favor.
Thank you. That passed unanimously, 6-0. Thank you, council. We'll move to third reading. Is there a member of council willing to move third reading? Councilor Van Nieuwkerk.
Pleased to move third reading, Mayor Daniluk, that bylaw 10004-21 be given third reading. Thank you.
Thank you, councilor. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote on third reading. Councilor Barnhart, how do you vote?
In favor.
Thank you. That also passes 6-0 unanimously. Thank you, council. All right. Oh, Councilor McCook, sorry, you had a comment?
That's okay.
Sorry.
Motion forward, but I can do that at another time.
Is it a notice of motion or is it a motion on fees and charges? Did I miss go too quickly on third reading?
It was fees on the fees, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so procedurally, should we have done that during second reading? Not being critical, but we're all learning our things here, so. Okay, so how do we proceed now to accommodate councilor's desire? Okay, do I require a motion to recall third reading? I'm assuming I do. I just declare it and we're good. Okay, council, any objections to my declaring third reading to be reversed? Seeing none?
It's the same as when a councillor votes in error, so it's just.
Okay, a do-over. All right, we get do-overs. Great.
I don't even think
A budget do-overs? No, sorry, Curtis, just kidding. Just kidding, Curtis. I saw your face drop. I said budget do-overs. Sorry, just kidding. Thank you for clarifying our procedure. I apologize, Councilman Cook. I didn't realize you wanted to make a motion, so I went a little quick there, but I was reading the room and saw nothing going up. So anyhow, Councilman Cook, you have the floor. We have reversed third reading. Catherine, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Daniluk. Sorry, it was just flying a little quickly there. I was trying to get in there. Okay. Do you have a motion for me or just? I'd like to move that the bylaw be amended by lowering the boardroom fees by 50% for the nonprofit groups at just for the 2 boardrooms at the community center.
Okay. Is there discussion on the motion? Please speak to your motion, please.
My reason for this is I think there will be just probably a select few groups that are using it, and the groups that would be, I think they don't have a lot of money. They're nonprofit groups. And I think just for them to use the boardroom once a month for the meeting, it would be good of us to be able to give it to them at that price.
Thank you, Councilor McCook. So Mr. DeBlanco, if I may put you on the spot for a moment, I believe it's $35 an hour presently for an hour. Is that correct? Or an evening? And we'll be reducing that by 50%. Is that correct?
That's correct. And I just want to get some clarification on the motion. When we're saying 50%, is that 50% of the 35 or 50% of the rates that are proposed in the bylaw?
The full price.
Okay.
The full rate.
So part of administration's recommendation of those 2 boardroom spaces that they would have minimal budget impact. So Mr. Suter can jump in if I'm incorrect, but the understanding is that this motion would have minimal financial impact on the city.
That's my next question going to be any impact financially on the budget we need to be concerned about, but by the sounds of it, it'll be negligible. Mr. Suter, would you concur?
Yes, Your Worship, I would support that. That was why we kind of was trying to steer it towards those boardrooms.
Okay, so to clarify, if I may, Councilor Cook, we're looking at 50% from the $35 rate, not the 25 in the budget, or the fees and charge we just passed a moment ago under second reading, correct?
My understanding of the motion is that was correct. So 50% of $35 is 17.5.
Thank you.
If I'm correct, if I don't have a
discussion on the motion, Councilor Miller, Ashley, you have the floor.
Thank you. My question is just how often are these boardrooms booked by the nonprofits currently? And what would be the impact if we didn't charge them at all to be using these boardrooms? So I guess that's 2 questions. Second one, probably Curtis can answer, but I don't know who answers the first one about the bookings.
Mr. Suter can take a stab at the booking idea, and Mr. DeBlanco can take a stab at the financial impact, which probably
Your Worship,
on the first question.
Sorry, through Your Worship to Councilor Miller, they're not booked a lot for regular monthly meetings by user groups. So that's kind of why I think it's a good solution here that we might be trying to achieve. So.
Would it be fair to say, Mr. Suter, in your expectation of bookings, that if we went to $0 with a friendly amendment possibly coming from Councilor Miller to Councilor McCook's reading, that there could be an increase in use by nonprofits to come and use our facility? I think probably would be an incentive to come and use our facility more. Would you agree?
I would agree, Your Worship, both in terms of financial, and we'd have to just get the word out that would be the case. And I think we would get some activity there for sure. Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. DeBlanco, any idea on estimation of costs? I'm guessing your guess is as good as mine, but any concerns from your end?
To the mayor, in terms of the financial impact for the actual rental space, I'm sure it would be minimal. Where we would see the financial impact would be if these user groups are booking large amounts of time that would then cause capacity concerns for other user groups that would be paying full rates. So there would be a potential loss of revenue from using up time slots that were now being used free of charge.
Okay, and potentially another impact could be janitorial services. Those rooms that aren't being used now and all of a sudden would be getting used, would need to be cleaned afterwards. So there could be an impact there down the road. So, okay, I appreciate that. Councilor Miller, would you looking at making a friendly amendment to Councilor McCook's motion at this point, or are you comfortable with the answers at this point?
I think I'm comfortable, I guess. I think I'm comfortable. I'll go with that.
Okay, so we'll leave it at the 50% at this time. You can maybe next budget, we can see how the first year goes and discuss the next budget if you'd like.
Okay.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much. Any further discussion on Councillor McCook's? Oh, Steve? Councilman Newkirk, you have the floor. Then I'll come to you, Kathy, okay?
Thank you.
Steve?
Yeah, Councillor Miller was hooking me in there a little bit. And then I started thinking more about setup and takedown and janitorial. And I think that, you know, the wait and see approach might be good, as you just suggested, Mayor. And, you know, we'll see where that goes. The important part here is increased access for nonprofit groups in Beaumont. That's the important part here that we're trying to achieve, by giving them, you know, by giving the breaker, and you know, still accounting for staffing requirements to set up and take down a room. So I'll be happy to support Councillor McCook's motion here. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I go to Kathy, I like your thinking, Councillor Miller, with the idea. I think it's easier for us and maybe prudent to go halfway there, see how the year goes, assess janitorial costs and so on. And then if we're comfortable, go one step further rather than go to zero and say a year from now, well, we didn't anticipate janitorial costs. Now we're back up to 50% higher. I think it's better to go one step at a time. So I do appreciate where you're going with that thought. Let's discuss it next year, in my opinion, at budget. Councillor Barnhart?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'm perfectly okay with the 50% and the intent of the motion. Thank you very much, Councillor McCook, for bringing it forward. One clarification. It may not seem like an issue right now because I think we're all thinking that not-for-profits would be community agencies who are delivering services in Beaumont. I wonder if the motion or subsequent procedure might clarify that the not-for-profits are community-based agencies. The reason I bring that up is that the term not-for-profit can apply to hospitals, school boards, religious groups, et cetera, et cetera. And I do not know if we want to clarify this at this point or if the administration wants to come back with a definition, but there could be groups from Leduc, from the city of Edmonton, from county, who see this as an opportunity as well. That may or may not be the intent. I would like to limit it to City of Beaumont community serving agencies myself.
Councillor McCook, would you like to potentially amend your motion based on the last comment? I see you looking to be agreeing that, which I think is not a bad idea. So Councillor McCook, you have the floor, and then we'll try to move to the vote more momentarily here. Catherine?
Thank you, Councillor Barnhart, for bringing that forward. I would agree with you on that. We want to make sure that we kind of keep it within our community and within those groups that potentially have a difficult time finding space and being able to pay for it. So I agree. We can amend the bylaw or the amendment. And I would agree in the fact that you guys mentioned as well with the cleaning fees. I understand that there would be cleaning fees associated with it. So we do have to, or it would be prudent to charge something just to kind of cover those costs at least.
Okay, I'll go to Councillor Miller, then I'll ask the motion be restated, and then we'll call for the vote. Councillor Miller, you have the floor, Ashley.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, guys. I'm having a change of heart. I'm just thinking, why not do this now at the 0%? If we do get an influx of bookings, I mean, at that point, then yes, maybe we can revisit and bring in the 50% increase or however we do it in a year, because it's only going to be more people in the year increasing the cleaning fees and that sort of thing, where we might be able to justify bringing in that charge for the rooms. But at this point, our main goal is to attract these people, these groups to come and utilize these facilities. So I think it's going to sit a lot better now than it is in a year to say that we're going down. I don't know. That's just my thought. I think it's better to do it now as opposed to let's, present it in a year. Because right now we don't have the people in the facilities that we maybe want utilizing those boardrooms. Just my thought.
Yeah.
So I would like to amend the bylaw if we can.
Okay. You want to make an amending motion?
Amending motion, yes.
Ms. Winter, can we clarify the process? Is it an amending motion or is it a new motion? I think it's an amending motion that we would vote on. And then if it should be passed, we could proceed. If it should be defeated, we go back to Councilman Cook's motion. Is that correct? Oh, sorry, microphone, my mistake.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, it is an amending motion. So we would suspend Councillor McCook's and deal with Councillor Miller's motion,
Okay.
and then see where we go from there and then go back to that motion.
Okay. Can we assist Councillor Miller with a motion, please?
And as much as I like, that's the technical verbiage of it, it's really just adding on to the initial thought process of Councillor McCook. She brought this forward and I'm just kind of trying to help bring it to the finish line for these groups. So I don't want to suspend any of your work. So thank you.
Well, we'll vote on your motion first, and should it be carried, that's fine. Should it be defeated, we go back to Councilman Cook's motion.
Okay.
Ms. Winter, can we put something on the screen that when you're comfortable? Yep. Well, no problem. No
I have a
pressure.
question, Mayor. I have a question for admin. Is that okay?
Councilor Cook, you have a question, please. Oh, there we go.
Thank you. I don't know if maybe CEO Schwartz or Paul would be able to answer a little bit better. Have we had a lot of interest in utilizing the rooms? One, I know part of this is to bring additional groups in, but two, do we think there's going to be a lot of issues with being able to clean the space and everything and being able to pay for cleaning the space in regards to Councillor Miller's motion?
Through your worship to Councillor McCook, I don't know how much demand there really is going to be. I'm just assuming there will be some interest. A couple of years ago, council directed admin to provide free meeting space for our groups at Ken Nickel, but the problem, it doesn't get used because the space is so little. So I think there'll be definitely more interest with a better setup at a boardroom. One thing I'm going to flag, if I can, your worship, on this motion, this amended motion, is we need to ensure that if it's not going to be charged for, we need to have it capped at hours. Otherwise, you're going to have a group booking it potentially for multiple hours, which will then reduce access for other groups. So when you have an hourly rate, then people got to be careful how much time they're going to actually book it. If it's free, then we have to cap it. So I'm just going to throw that out for as a flag.
Councilor Miller, would you care to respond to that?
Great point. I think that's fair. If we're gonna lower or reduce the fees to 0 at this point to put a cap, that's totally fair, I think.
Once a month?
Are we talking, we're talking how many times a month, or we're talking hours per use, or what are we talking about?
Okay, we're getting bogged down in some details here, which I appreciate, but
Sorry.
it's okay. No, it's okay. We'll get there quickly. The point is, most of these nonprofits are having monthly meetings.
Okay.
That's $35. Now we're talking $17.50. Now we're talking $0. So I think once a month would be, it's your motion, as you please. But I think we were talking monthly nonprofits having board meetings, monthly committee meetings, and so on. So please amend your motion as you see fit with the time cap. If you want to make it.
Sure. Yeah. If that's what they're doing, if they're doing it monthly, then I'm comfortable with sticking to once a month.
Yeah. Okay. Now, one danger we're doing, we're also sort of creating policy on the fly, which is not normally do that. Don't do this sort of thing. So I'm going to wrap it up quickly here, because I don't want to start creating policy kind of as we go along. So I appreciate the intent. I'm not being critical. We just need to get through this and get ourselves organized on this particular motion. So one more. Okay, that's Councillor Miller's motion. Discussion. Would you mind reading your motion, please, Ashley, to make sure we're clear on it? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. I move that bylaw 1004-21 be amended by removing the one-time monthly fee for City of Beaumont registered not-for-profit and community volunteer organizations rental of boardrooms.
Before I go to any questions from council, I'll go to Ms. Winter first.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to confirm, are we speaking about the community center? Just want clarification on that too.
Community center.
Community center. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tessier, you've been patient. You have the floor, Renee.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, I'm good with the free. What's 17, 15 bucks are free. Let's try to drive some traffic in there. The only comment I have is when someone books it, it might be a good idea to just comment saying, it's free for non-for-profits. Let's try to clean up after yourself. I know back in the day, the fire hall was free and the Ag Society would just clean it up, and they did a pretty good job. And is there also an option, say they use it once a month, but they want to use it again, does it just go back to the $35 an hour?
I'm assuming it would. They're getting one free. Why would they get the second one free? But I,
Just saying if that's an amendment, that's, at least it gives them an option to have more. And maybe that's where the 50% comes in. I don't want to bog down $10, but I'm just saying,
Okay.
put it together and call it a day.
I get that we're continually now making policy on the fly. So I'm going to make an executive decision and we're going to vote on the motion as presented. And I'm not in favor of the motion. Having said that, for the exact reason we're talking about, we're trying to accommodate, I understand the principle we're trying to accommodate. We're also making policy on the fly. So before I have my final comments, Councillor Barnard, do you have any questions on this motion? Oh, sorry, Kathy, sorry, before I go to you, Ms. Winter.
Mayor, I just want to confirm that I did add in the Beaumont Community Center, and I just want to make sure Councilor Miller is okay with the addition of that, for clarification on the motion.
Yeah, I believe that was covered in the fact that Ken Nickel and was not included. So yeah, the SRC.
Thank you.
Or community center, sorry.
Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the intent of both motions, and perhaps I would be voting, no, not perhaps, I will be voting against this particular amended motion because I do believe that charging a small fee for the room encourages the groups to attend. I have seen too many examples where you give something for free and then people, I think Mr. Suter was alluding to it, people don't necessarily think that they need to cancel when they know they're not paying something for it. I think at $17.50 is a pretty nominal fee for any nonprofit group. And I will be voting against this amending motion, but I'll tip my hand. I'm for the 50%. Thank you.
Blanco, do you have your mic on for a reason or my mistake? Thank you. Any further questions from council on this motion? I will speak to it also. As I mentioned earlier, I think it's, I like where you're going. I like the idea, but I think it's appropriate to just go 50% and see how the first year goes. I always go down later. It's difficult in my mind to go to zero and then say, oops, we forgot about this kind of a fee. Now we're back to $17.50 again. So I'm going to vote against the motion for that reason, only because I think we need to give it 1 year to see how it works out. So having said that, Councillor McCook, then I'll call for the vote on the motion. Councillor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Daniluk. Yes, thank you, Councillor Miller. I appreciate where you're going with this, but I have to agree. I think sometimes charging a nominal fee just ensures that people are respectful and that the space is cleaned and everything like that. And I'm definitely for potentially reviewing this later down the road and seeing, maybe we're not getting any movement and we need some, or people are using it more, and we see that it's been a good change, and potentially review at a later time. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Newkirk, I'll ask for a brief comment if you could, please, and then we'll move on to the vote. Thank you.
Yeah, very brief. I just wanted to point out good discussion, and either one of these motions is a win for our groups in Beaumont. So, despite the conversation here, either is a win in my view. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So council, we're going to now vote on the motion. Please vote accordingly. Councillor Barnhart, please state your vote.
On the motion by Councillor Miller, I'm opposed.
You're opposed?
To the one for the zero? Yes.
Yes, thank you. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 noes, 2 yeses. The motion is defeated. Thank you, council. I appreciate that. We're back to Councillor McCook's motion, which is back in front of us now. Would you read it one more time, please, Catherine, to be sure it's clear? Thank you. Oh, hang on a second. Give me your mic. There you go.
That bylaw 1004-21 be amended by reducing the fees for City of Beaumont registered not-for-profits and community volunteer organizations rental of boardrooms by 50% of the full rate. And do we need to include that it's for the community center on that as well?
Okay. Good with the motion? Catherine, it looks right.
Yep.
Discussion of the motion, council. Councillor Barnhart.
No questions at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, council. I will call for the vote. Please vote accordingly. Councillor Barnhart, how do you vote?
In favor.
Thank you. The vote passes 6-0 unanimously. Thank you, council. I do appreciate the passion with the discussion. We'll be mindful of not creating policy on the fly as best we can in the future, but I do appreciate where we're going with this. So had we had this discussion during budget on the fourth night, we may have had to avoid some of the discussion tonight. No big deal. It's all good. We got through it. So we can now, where are we at now with the motions? Are we on third reading now? We're back to third reading. So man, now do I ask for another consensus vote to go to third reading? Because it never happened in the first place, right? We did a do-over. So my interpretation is we need a consensus. Okay. So as a half do-over. Just kidding. Council, is there a member, council willing to move third reading as amended? Councilor Miller, you have the floor, Ashley.
Thank you, Mayor Daniluk. I move that bylaw 1004-21 be considered for third reading as amended.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion, council. Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Councilor Barnhart, how do you vote?
In favor, Mayor.
Thank you. That motion carries 6-0 unanimously. Thank you, council. All right. Our next order of business on our agenda is, let me get down to 9A, councilor inquiries, responses, and reports. Councilor Miller, Don Sparrow Lake, winter season, which I believe will be spoken to by administration. Who is speaking to the motion, please? Oh, Ms. Winter, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. The councillor inquiries are just information items on the agenda. They don't need motions or anything like that. They're just information.
I misunderstood my notes. Thank you very much.
Thank
So
you.
we will not need to go through 9A, B, C, or D. Thank you very much. Brings to point number 10. Oh, Councilor McCook.
Thank you, Mayor Daniluk. Through to Shalane, are we able to ask questions on them now, or is it better that we should have asked questions previously?
Well, we are on councilor inquiry, so I'm assuming we can ask questions. Ms. Winter, would you care to comment?
Thank you, Mayor, through you to Councillor McCook. The thought process with regards to the councillor inquiries that we would bring those back and just put them on the agenda as being dealt with, and just bringing and putting the actual reports within the agenda as information items. Any questions that you would have with regards to those inquiries should be asked at the time you're getting that response from administration.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. That answer your question, Councillor? Thank you. Councillor Van Newkirk, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. I had a fresh councillor inquiry for tonight. I've provided that to legislative services. I just want to say it does take a little bit of time to get stuff up on the board and stuff like you guys are doing, but I personally, I do find it helpful. So take your time and do it, because I think it helps the process and stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah, so my inquiry tonight is for administration to please provide information on how the city addresses freezing rain and how the city handles keeping the trail network safe for residents to use. If you could examine what resources the city has and how they're being prioritized, and how, identify how residents should bring forward concerns about these issues to the city. And just a little bit on that is, we had a really crazy weather event, and when you wake up with a 1/4 inch of ice all over everything in the community, it's a struggle everywhere. So there's pressures and priority pressures and all of that that goes along with everything. But it seemed to be that there was an influx of trail concerns that came up from the community. So I just wanted to put this out there and get administration to respond a bit to that. And thank you.
CEO Schwartz.
Yes, thank you very much for your inquiry, and we'll certainly turn this in. We've got a response during this meeting, which you've all received, but in the interest of the process, what I'll do is turn this into the memo, and we'll include it in the next council package. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO Schwartz. Follow up, Mr. Van Newkirk, you're good. Thank you. Are there any further councillor inquiries or questions for administration at this point? Councillor Barnhart.
No, I'm good. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Councillor Tessier, you have the floor.
Sorry, I didn't send it legal. I just, that administration provide information and details on the difference of what our proposed 10G project is compared to the other communities that are receiving the 10G network. Just getting questions, and I don't understand the differences also. Thanks.
Thank you. CEO Schwartz.
Yeah, we can certainly do that. We briefed the previous council. We haven't had a chance to brief you. We can give you some key messages. They're out there.
Councillor Tessier, you're good with that? Thank you very much. Are there any further questions from council for administration at this point? We go to the next item on the agenda is number 10, CEO update. Mr. Schwartz, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you very much, members of council, Mayor Daniluk. I'll be really quick here, but there's a few things that I'd like to cover off. One is the Beaumont News had reached out to us this week, and there'll be an article going in the paper. They're reaching out to different municipalities in the region to talk about mandatory COVID vaccinations. So early in November, the city of Beaumont introduced a directive that requires all employees to be vaccinated, to show proof of vaccination by November 21st as their first shot, or if they preferred, the directive also allowed them to provide a negative COVID test results. So we introduced the directive for 3 reasons, and we gave it a lot of thought. One was to protect the health and well-being of each other and the public, and to do our part to take the pressure off the healthcare system. And the last was to minimize the potential of an outbreak, which could disrupt services to the residents. Council has provided us direction to do what we can to continue with all of our services and provide as many services as we possibly can. And we've continued to do that. We have a very conscientious staff, which you'll get to know more and more. They care deeply about this community, and we are 95% vaccinated, fully vaccinated, and we have 5% of our employees who have chosen to provide the negative test at the regular intervals. So that's pretty impressive. We didn't take this lightly, and I've said this before, because we wanted to provide options and we wanted to protect privacy. So there will be an article in this week's paper that'll talk about that. But I really want to stress that it speaks very highly of the people that are working in this organization and the values of our organization. So that's a heads up for you. So when the paper comes out Friday. Another announcement that went out today was the Auto Guardian Trail Crossing Pilot Project, and there'll be more information put on our website, so I won't go into a lot of detail. What this is cutting edge IT to intelligent mobility solutions in Beaumont. So we're going to put some data collectors that Auto Guardian, in partnership with us, is going to put some data collectors at several trailheads, and it'll monitor the technology, monitor how many pedestrians are coming by, how many cyclists are coming by, how many vehicles are coming by, and then that data will then be used to feed the next phase of the project, which will have some automatic lighting systems as soon as either the pedestrian or the cyclist crosses. So it's pretty cool technology, and just another example of how Beaumont is that living lab, if you will, or the terminology we've been using is the sandbox city. And the last item I'll pass along to you is you requested to be informed when the Ken Nichols sign is coming down. So it's coming down on Thursday. So those are my updates, unless I've missed anything. I'll look to my left or to my right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schwartz. Any questions, Mr. Schwartz's report? Councillor Barnhart, any questions?
Just one, Mayor, to Mr. Schwartz. Is there a cost related to the Auto Guardian Trail Crossing IT solution, or is that something that we're doing with sponsorship dollars?
We've entered into a 1-year partnership pilot to see how it goes, and there'll be no cost for that first year, and then we can determine whether it's something as a city we want to continue with.
Excellent. And then further to that, the locations, did you mention the locations, or is that to be decided?
No, the locations they have been selected. Well, we sent a briefing out today. Let me just find the 2 locations. Oh, I had them right in front of me. I don't. I'll send them out by an email. Oh, yes. Two trailer road intersections were chosen for the project, 50th Avenue just east of the Beaumont Sports and Rec Center and 60th Avenue adjacent to 64th Street. They were selected based on factors including traffic volumes and the sites where data would be useful in traffic planning and proximity to electrical infrastructure.
Sounds good. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Mr. Schwartz, for your report. On to number 11A, which is the FIFA World Cup support letter request. Council, we had distributed the letter I received a little while ago from Mr. Gill regarding looking for support from our municipality regarding the FIFA World Cup coming to Canada. Edmonton appears to be on the dance card for having FIFA games, which would be very, very exciting in 2026. Looking for a letter of support just to say that our community is supporting of it. Is there any questions before I ask for a motion to draft a letter of support for this request? Seeing none, is there a motion from a councillor to offer a letter of support on this topic? Councillor Miller.
All right, I move that administration prepare a letter of support for the Edmonton FIFA Champions Committee's endorsement to Edmonton's 5-match FIFA 2026 event, and that the mayor, on behalf of council, signs the letter.
Thank you. Councillor, discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Councillor Barnhart, how do you vote?
I'm in favor.
Thank you. Council, that passes 6-0 unanimously. Thank you very much. Moving on to the next part of our agenda, which is down into the notice of motion. Is there any notice of motion from councillors this evening to be tabled? Councillor Van Nieuwkerk, you have the floor, Steve.
Yes, I would like to make a notice of motion this evening. I'll just wait while legislative services pops it up here.
Yeah, thank you.
I move that at the January 11th, 2022 council meeting, I will move that by the end of the first quarter of 2022, administration provide a report on the city's high-intensity residential fire HRF requirements, including options, implications, and considerations for achieving the less than 10-minute response time 90% of the time in the city. Thank you.
Thank you. And to clarify, we're moving that the motion is being moved today, right? Not January 11th of 2022. We're moving it today.
No.
Right. At the last council meeting. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, Councilman Newkirk. Are there any further notice of motion? Councilor Miller, then I have one myself after you're completed. Ashley, you have the floor once it's up on the screen.
Perfect. Thank you. My motion is at the January 11th, 2022 meeting, I will move that by the end of January 2022, administration provide a report that explains the rationale for the light times and ice fishing signage placement at Don Sparrow Lake, and that the report include any possible options for expanding the current skating surface at the lake and providing more picnic tables.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. We look forward to seeing that debate in January along with Councillor Van Nieuwkerk's notice of motion. And I will have any other notice of motion before I have my own placed on the screen. Councillor Barnhart, do you have a notice of motion this evening?
No, I do not, Mayor.
Thank you very much. I will have my notice of motion placed on the screen when it's available, and I'll speak to it. Thank you. At the January 11th, 2022 council meeting, I will move that by the end of the first quarter of 2022, administration provide a report that includes information on any pedestrian safety issues at the intersection of 56A Street and 50th Avenue, as well as any options for improving pedestrian safety at that intersection. Thank you, Council. Are there any further notice of motion this evening? Seeing none, brings us to the end of our agenda. I want to thank Council Administration for their efforts in 2021, and we'll see you all in 2022 on January 11th. So have a safe and great holiday season. Thank you for your attention, and I call this meeting adjourned at 8:22. Thank you.